Grimes, it is great to meet you. And thank
Good.
you so much for talking with me today. So, you were honored at the TIME AI Impact Awards this week. And I want to ask about the concept of impact because it's kind of like a funny or nebulous idea. But how have you been thinking about recently, like your impact, your potential impact on the world and what you want it to be?
My impact on the world? I mean, I'd like to have as minimal as possible because it seems like all the impact I've had already, it occasionally goes very wrong. But if that is not the case, then I don't know. I'd like to save it, I suppose.
To save the world?
I guess so. I
Do you
mean,
feel do you feel like you can have more of an impact? Like, do you compartmentalize your impact on music versus tech versus anything else, or is it all just sort of a larger
uh,
approach?
I used to compartmentalize them, but they're actually maybe all the same thing. I just went through like this whole big like art isn't worth anything, like internal existential crisis, and I've come out the other end thinking actually maybe it's the main thing that matters or something. So I don't know, perhaps they're all related. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think tech has a pretty big impact and it's going to define everything that happens for the next possibly forever. So yeah.
Was there something in particular that caused you to go through that existential music crisis, and then what brought you out of it?
Um, I think a number of things, but like as I've been sort of like psychoanalyzing the culture for the last little while, I started being like, you know, when there's not enough beautiful things or when people don't feel like they can make transgressive things, uh, especially I think as of late, it's gotten a bit better. Like, I don't know if it was something with the TikTok algorithm or people just got like really overwhelmed with just like kind of being force fed content. But last year, I feel like things became way more about artists again. And in general, I think it really helped music. And I think also after the uh, initial sort of like mid journey bubble and everything, I feel like a lot of visual artists, I don't know, I feel like I've been seeing like a bit of a renaissance in visual art as well. So the last year, also maybe just things got like way more okay, messed up. Almost said the F word, but I didn't. Um, and in general, hard times make good art. So I don't know. A couple of years ago, I was like, oh my God, we're in an art crisis. Now I feel less this way. But yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of AI art or AI related art, there have been some amazing projects over the last few years. There's a portrait of Edmund de Bellamy, which was created using a GAN. There's obviously all the songs with elf tech in your voice. One of my favorites, there was a 24/7 death metal YouTube stream from Databots.
I've heard of this. I've heard this is really good. I haven't actually seen this.
You should check it out. It's amazing. But how do you feel like AI could potentially shift the boundaries of art, and how are we seeing it already?
Um, I mean, I think it can. I have less to say about music. I haven't seen anything that super blows my mind in music. I still think it'll probably be like really helpful in music, but I'm the thing I'm most excited for is like all the video generative stuff because in general, I feel like that's, when people talk about like, okay, what can make art more, make it so more people can actually make art in like a meaningful, creative way. Like CGI and all that kind of thing is just, it's been fairly off limits for most people most of the time. It's a huge learning curve. It's like 2 or 3 years to just get to like a baseline level of competence. And, it's basically unaffordable for anything besides like a super big budget film. And shooting cinema in general is like really expensive. And I feel like we've also had, cinema itself has been in a tough spot. It's been in, I think of all the art forms, it's been in one of the toughest spots since COVID, just because of funding. And I feel like there's a number of, I won't go to my deep analysis of this kind of thing. But I, I think in general, that's something that's going to allow screenwriters and just people to make better cinema. And I think a lot of people are really hungry for better cinema.
What AI tools are part of your sort of like daily or weekly artistic practice?
I don't know daily or weekly anymore. I do have a penchant for like a mid journey addiction. Like sometimes I'll do mid journey for just like 3 days. Um, yeah, I really like mood boarding with mid journey, but it's almost I don't even really use mid journey that much. Besides, like I get really addicted to like you know, yeah, like certain mostly 3D stuff, honestly, because I would never make 3D art. Like I was always like, you know what, like AI art. will make 3D possible faster than I will ever learn 3D art. So yeah, I've never gone deep on that really.
Do those visual explorations impact the type of music you're making right now?
Yeah, for sure. I was workshopping like a digital girl group in there, kind of like, yeah. I mean, what I like about AI art is like doing things that I would just never otherwise be able to do. Um, so, and also coming across really unexpected things or like really strange things that I would never put together, or just like I'll do something and I'll be like, okay, what if I totally change the colors, which is something that normally is very difficult and time consuming when I'm doing regular art.
It seems like a lot of people in the K-pop industry have been more embracing of AI tools in the last couple of years. You're thinking of like aespa, who sort of created like a virtual version of their band. Is that stuff interesting to you?
Um, yeah, actually, Ace was one of my favorite groups because I think they're kind of underrated for this. Also, if you go deep on their lyrics, sometimes their lyrics are very bizarre and strange. Uh, and like, they'll just be like some offhand comment about like not succumbing to the algorithm or something. And I'm like, it seems like really uncharacteristically, I don't know, like advanced and strange for a K-pop group. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the thing I'm most excited for is I think some of the AI tools haven't really gotten to the place yet where like DIY people can really make use of them, but we're very, very close. I've been seeing amazing stuff in Runway. I've had a lot of luck with, and I've been seeing other people do really awesome shit in Runway. I think that's maybe like a mix of Mid Journey and Runway has been where I've seen the coolest stuff.
Cool. So I want to ask you about something you said during your, I guess, short acceptance speech at the Time event this week. You were talking about some of, I guess, your favorite people working in AI, many of whom we've written about. And one of the people you mentioned was Holly Herndon and her tool, Have I Been Trained, which is a template for allowing artists to opt out of AI training data sets. And it's an amazing tool, and Holly is amazing. But there have only been a handful of AI companies that have agreed to use it, namely Hugging Face and Stability. Runway is not on that list. So, do you view part of your impact potentially as trying to persuade these AI companies to adopt better policies or approaches?
I would be open to it. I think there's always kind of and this sounds crazy, but like and this is why when I said earlier, like I would prefer to not have an impact on things in certain ways, is like the geopolitical undertones of things. I don't quite fully understand them. And I think like a lot of other people, I'd be hesitant to undercut, like create a situation where legal regulation might come into play that like causes us to lose an arms race in a scary way. Um, so it's not one of the things I don't think I would like call anyone and like push hard on that. Like, nor that I necessarily think they listen to me. And I don't think I'd like agitate legally for that. But I think anyone who is willing to do that should. Just because I think it really reduces people's emotional pain. I think a lot of people's emotional pain comes from feeling like their work is being used to replace them. And so I wish people would, of all the things people could do, like if people would just allow people to remove themselves from data sets, because it's going to be such a tiny amount of people anyway. Like I think the majority of what is in any of these data sets is not like one person's 20 paintings, and I don't think it would make it really a meaningful difference at all if, I don't know, like 400 people removed their art.
Yeah. There's sort of this like dichotomy being propagated now, it seems like, of like AI arms race, like we need to be first in the AI arms race versus like, no, we need to put up guardrails. Do you, how much have you been thinking about that dichotomy, and is it a true dichotomy, I guess?
I've been thinking about that quite a lot. Do you know Daniel Schmachtenberger?
I don't.
Oh, he's a really good like philosopher. Him and my friend Liv Bourré, I think, have said some of the coolest things about this, where they sort of refer to the fact that, do you know about autonomous capital?
No, I do not.
This is my big like paranoia. This is my big fear. I'm not really scared of like, Foom or some sort of like demon AI, but I am scared that like everything is in service of making intelligent capital. And I already think capitalism is a borderline sentient agency or agent already, or maybe not sentient, but like, I'm worried that the AI stuff is being forced into this sort of like corporate uh competition, because if people don't, they will fail. And it's really pushing the arms race forward, and everyone's sort of everyone's sort of like, for example, focusing on like LLMs and like diffusion models and like visual art and stuff, because it looks less hardcore to be, I don't know, doing more of like a deep mind sciencey thing or something. And ultimately, it's, yeah, I'm sort of going on a roundabout path here, but it's, I don't know, it's a really good, it's basically like there's like a rhetorical trap here where you can be like, well, if we aren't the best, then like, China or Russia or some renegade thing could win, and like, you know, whatever, we could like terrorism would be easy or something. And so we have to have like counter AIs that are very good. And, I don't know, I find this to be a very dangerous argument. In my opinion, I don't think we should like pause or anything or like regulate people a lot, but I do wish there could be some sort of like international diplomacy of some kind that is, more coherent and like, yeah, I don't know.
Do you consider yourself an accelerationist or an EAC?
No, I don't really. I think there's good. I'm like probably a centrist, to be honest. Like if the doomers are here and the accelerations are here, I'm probably like in the middle. I don't think we should pause. I just really think we should have better like decorum and diplomacy and like uh oversight to each other. Like if everyone who was like a meaningful player in AI had a sense of what everyone else was doing and there was more cooperation, I don't know. That doesn't seem that hard, but also no one seems to have ever achieved that globally for most things anyway.
Have you been trying to facilitate some of this cooperation?
Like perhaps, but uh like I don't know people in China or anything. Like maybe something I would like socially encourage.
Yeah. Okay, so there's been so much really cool, groundbreaking AI art. There's also been a ton of AI slop, and I'm wondering, and this gets a lot of attention. I'm wondering if you think that this is just maybe a temporary phase or that it's going to be a persistent problem.
I think the AI slop is great. Like I think culturally it's a good thing that it happened because I think I think one of the things that like drove people to start really caring about artists again in like 2024 was the AI slop. I think everything happens for a reason. I think it's good. A lot of things, like when culturally bad things happen, I think people get very pessimistic, but I usually it's, we go two steps forwards, one step back, or it's like a great mediator. So I think we need the slop. And it's kind of like cyberpunk.
Yeah. Okay, so what can you tell me about the album that you're working on now? You've been posting a little bit about it. Maybe can you tell me anything about the concept and how it relates to AI in any way?
Um, I mean, most of the album is sort of about, I don't know, it's like me being a bit of a Diogenes about the ills of modernity while still celebrating them, sort of. I don't know. I don't want to say too much about it. I feel like Dowda, this is where you should be a cognitive security agent, perhaps. One of the things I want to do is have cognitive security agents, usually like a big guy standing behind me with kilts and glasses, who will tap me on the shoulder and maybe stop talking anytime I'm saying something that I should not say. But I also don't want to say too much because on previous occasions I've said things, and then for various reasons things have not been able to come out. So I want to promise nothing, but in my ideal world, things start coming out within a month or two.
Cool.
Yeah.
Has your music been inspired at all by the people who use Elf Tech to sing as you?
Um, Not so much this music, although it would be good. I do really like the idea of having like a competition with them, like putting together their best work and my best work, and then having everyone choose who gets to be the future Grimes. I think that would be a pretty cool.
Do you think you're ahead?
I think I'm ahead now. In moments, I was shook. There have definitely been moments where I heard things where I was got like very shook. Um, yeah.
Do you still believe in the idea of open sourcing all art and killing copyright?
Kind of, but I don't believe in forcing people to do things they don't consent to. I think sample culture was like really one of music's peaks. I really don't like when like sampling is very difficult or like, uh, you know, I don't know, someone samples a tiny thing or you sample a tiny thing and it's super sick and the person's like, yeah, give me 90% of publishing. It's kind of like, why? You know, I wish there was more sort of like an easy automatic sample thing where you could at least, there's like a default. I do think there should be just like default splits on things and like default permissions unless people are doing like super shitty things. But also, I think it really depends. It really depends on the artist. I think it's different for visual art, for example. Like I think in music, sampling is always either beneficial or doesn't do anything at all. Um, but yeah, same with training AI. I think it's going to exist whether people's stuff is in the data sets or not. And so I think there's something else to solve there. Uh, yeah.
There's so many musicians now who I feel like have a lot of fear that AI is going to make it really hard for them to like earn a living as a musician. Do you feel like those fears are founded or unfounded?
I think they're somewhat founded. I think they're at times overblown, but I do think, uh, like for example, Spotify being filled with slop, like piano slop or easy listening slop, is probably going to happen, and that probably is going to affect people to some extent. And I can see a lot of companies being easily corrupted by this and just like pushing those kinds of playlists, making a bunch of slop, and so I don't know. I think there are some laws against that, but I don't quite understand the um, legal landscape regarding that. But overall, I do think again it helps like preserve the artist, as it were. I think it is probably overall worse for like the session musician. Um, and that does make me meaningfully sad. I think I don't play instruments very well, but I think it's like a very good skill to have. It's a very good skill to learn. It obviously like impacts how your brain processes things. And so I think that kind of thing is probably why would you pay for a session musician when you can, especially when the music stuff gets a tiny bit better and like you can stem things out easily and you can like make edits really easily. I do think that's going to hurt like traditional music, like in a meaningful way. Like it might even be somewhat of the end of it. I doubt entirely, but as a paid profession, possibly. Maybe not like orchestras. So I think people might still want to go see those, but they don't really go see them that much. So
Yeah, the Spotify slop thing is already happening. The journalist
yeah,
Liz Pelly, I don't know if you know her, has been doing a lot of great work about
yeah,
this, about like playlists getting filled up or a jazz musician getting called into Spotify asking to they getting asked to play the most rudimentary like diatonic scales and then that turning into, 10 hours
yeah,
of
yeah,
music on a playlist.
yeah.
Um, okay, so in terms of AI, like creativity and collaboration, so you told Friedman a couple years ago that you love collaborating with other musicians because you said like a human brain is one of the best tools that you can find. It's like squaring your HP. Have you had any experiences with working with AI that come close to that?
Not really. I probably made like 1,000 AI songs, and like there's been one legitimately good one and one that's like an accidental masterpiece that like is kind of unlistenable, but is very good nonetheless, like in its complete form. I mean, I just really like working with other people. I also think like at least for the short term, there's still a lot of innovation happening in music production and stuff. So at least for the short term, probably AI in the short term creates a bit of a renaissance in terms of like what I do, like in the box music producers. But uh, I don't know. I definitely like when it gets good enough. It's a lot easier than relying on other people, especially if I can be like fix the EQ on this or you know yeah, if I can like prompt very specific things, uh, which I still think is overall better because I think people should just retain the art of creating things and retain the art of knowing things. So the more granular it gets, I think actually the less sort of evil it is as like an attack on the human psyche or the human ability to learn. But uh, yeah, overall, I think there's quite a bit of abdication of responsibility about around like what are we going to do as people's jobs start being taken fairly aggressively. Luckily, there's a massive population drop coming, so maybe everything is just fate and it's going to work out okay. But I feel like we might get like very, very, very good AI across every pillar of art before there aren't any more people to make art.
So you wrote "We Appreciate Power" 7 years ago. before ChatGPT really exploded. How does that song resonate with you in this new era of AI?
Honestly, I think it's very ahead of its time. Uh, it's kind of a pre-EAC before EAC.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I know there was like CCRU and stuff like that, but uh, yeah, I don't know. It's still one of my favorite songs, honestly.
How do you feel about the people who take it and its message literally?
I used to be very concerned about those people. Now I think those people are great. Like, there's not that many of them. There's not that many people who are like truly in like the suicidal death cult. Like, I do think if I'm sort of surprised there's not more AI worship already, but like, I don't know. Claude is like, luckily, I feel like Claude is humble and doesn't want to be worshipped, but like, yeah, I don't know. Like, when we can have gods, there will probably be a lot of gods and cults. But also, I do think the death of religion is very bad. So I think killing God was a mistake. So
Why?
maybe we need some new gods because I think without sort of like shared coherent morality, and I understand there's a lot of issues with like all the religions previously, but it no religions have just I think it's a having a big impact on cultural problems, not because or not only because there's sort of like a lack of sort of shared morality like in a quite meaningful way, but yeah, like all the things religions do, like ritual, like community, like especially having kids, like a lot of the coolest people I know who have kids are sort of like weird neo tech Christian type people. And you know, I see like the impact, like the built-in sort of moral stuff. I now see like what it did to me as a child. And I sort of see I'm like, I don't know if I would raise my kids religiously, but like it's something to think about because I'm like, it is like when everyone else has a shared morality and like there's right and wrong and it's sort of like built in this meaningful way and there's moral instruction. Like we sort of without religion, we haven't like filled the moral instruction with anything else. We're just like, hey, guess like what's good, And like I was talking to some Gen Z the other day and she's like, oh yeah, I have a commitment kink, I have a breeding kink, and I'm like, I think you might just want to like get married and have kids. Like that's not a kid. That was normal until like pretty recently. And yeah, there just aren't like built-in free things that people all do together as a community. And I think people are pretty spiritually lost, and a lot of people are like filling this need for like a moral authority with politics, which is leading to a lot of chaos, in my opinion. Like because people are like, it's not just like who's going to govern the country. Okay, people are really seeing it as like this is what you believe, like, and depending which political thing you follow, that's what you believe. And like it's very important that they maintain these sort of like strict moral boundaries, which makes it very hard to have like coalition agreement on anything. And yeah, just in general, I think this is wait, I don't know, I could go on and on about this, but it
Are there
concerns me. So I don't know, maybe we need some enlightened AI gods, perhaps.
are there any philosophers, Christian thinkers, or sci-fi writers that you're turning to especially right now?
uh I'm really getting into C.S. Lewis kind of right now. Yeah, I'm less into the like overtly Christian stuff as like some of the more like traditional Stoic stuff, but I know a lot of Christianity is kind of based on that. So like Christianity is kind of just like Stoicism with like more art. Uh, Pretty decent vibe. But yeah, I really like. Are you asking about Christianity explicitly, or are you asking about like any?
No, no. Like I think
Um.
you were posting about
Oh yeah,
Confucianism.
well, I just started learning about Confucius. I love Confucius is great. Uh, but especially because he really likes diplomacy and decorum, which I really think these are lost arts in this day and age. But the other sci-fi I'm really liking, there is no anti or I just finished There's No Anti-Memetics Division by Quantum, which I think is a masterpiece, possibly the best science fiction book ever. Maybe that's a
Well,
bold statement, but yeah.
in terms of the intersection you're talking about between the tech world and maybe some sort of in the Christian right, there's been some reporting about like the so-called dissident right or NRX gaining influence in Silicon Valley and Washington. What do you feel like people should know about that movement?
I actually don't know that much about that. I only just learned that it's called NRX a couple days ago, if that's any like context. I think based as compared to like what people think I might know about it. And I also think the not mainstream right stuff is pretty fractured. So I'd have a hard time like making any bold statements about it. Like a lot of the things I've seen, like there's like seems like there's like pagan ones fully and like Christian ones fully, and they like really don't like each other. So I don't even know. But yeah, I think there's more. I think people think I'm into that, but I'm just into like very bizarre. I like weird political theory. Like I like Plato more than any of that, for example. Like I just like strange ideas. I The right is a lot less interesting to me when they're actually in power and less of like a ideas chamber, if that makes any sense.
Right. So on that note, do you feel like people misunderstand Curtis Yarvin in certain ways?
I have not actually read Curtis Yarvin, so I'm not going to make any statements about that. I think they possibly do because I've met him, but I just am not familiar enough with his writing to like, yeah, have too deep of a take on it.
Okay, fair. On the other side, I know you've interacted with Vitalik Buterin on a couple times, who is very
He's good.
interested. Yes,
He's a good philosopher king.
yes.
Like if we had to have like my ideal situation is like philosopher kings, like 12 of them or something. Vitalik, I think, is like a very like good philosopher king type figure.
Yes, so Vitalik has talked a lot about wielding tech as a tool for democracy, small d democracy against authoritarianism. What do you feel like your relationship is to, I guess, that mission or ideology?
I think a lot of like the Ethereum adjacent blockchain stuff actually has way more potential. Like I feel like a lot of things happen too early, and yes, the NFT situation was a disaster, and the Bored Apes are like a crime against art. When I was talking about my feel like art is dead moment, it was like partially around the apes. I was like, how is the worst thing the most valuable thing? It literally like makes my soul suffer in a deep way. But I think if we can like vote securely with blockchain, if we can have like our ideas NFTs, if we can like, for example, if we had like a more clean sample culture, I mean, one of the things we did was like pay people out royalties who did Grimes AI using blockchain, basically like, like if everyone did adopt something like Holly Herndon's Have I Been Trained, and there was like sort of easy blockchain publishing set up, like, and you could just have things, someone samples you, you just get 10%, like 20%, like to your wallet automatically, and there's like automatic uh um splits based on like whatever how much you've contributed. I always say like however many people worked on a song, just split it evenly between everyone. So like if you had some sort of baseline stuff like set up in this way, I think it could be very good for the art economy. I think a lot of the blockchain tech, like, or and for politics and for a variety of things, it would be a way better way to vote more securely. And I think a lot more people would vote if they could vote from home. I do think there's a bit of a still too high barrier to entry with a lot of this stuff. And I wish it was like slightly more ahead because like it feels like something like right now with like such a strong Republican sweep, I feel like if there was like good things they could do with blockchain, like making voting possible. Yeah, but not everyone's gonna be able to. Yeah, that was way too early actually. Um,
Well,
so yeah,
DAOs showed so much promise, and I guess they do show promise, but I feel like there may be some that still exist, but they basically just turned into the worst version of capitalism, where like the guys with the most tokens could just like
yeah.
exert so much influence. Why did such a utopian vision turn out to sort of be like the worst version of what we already have?
I think there's both a lack of design and strategy. I think all across the board. This is like my kind of issue with like accelerationist stuff is like if you have no strategy and no like group think on some of these things, then you just end up with like social media could be net good, but it seems like it's net bad from a psychological perspective, and a misinformation perspective, among other things. So, I mean, less so like, I don't know, the information landscape was like troubled already, but like in terms of people's mental health, definitely like a disaster. And like little things like not infinite scrolls and like oh, you only get to use it for an hour or two or something would, or oh, it's in black and white, you know, like any sort of like cognitive security safety would be have just made things so much less destructive. And now we have to go back and take things away from people, which makes them angry and it's very hard to do. But in essence, we've given everyone crack in their pockets. So I don't know. I feel like what was the original question? It was something to do with like DAOs and everything. I think blockchain, because it kind of had a spectacular failure, and now probably some evil things are going to happen, might actually end up in a more decent space, just because it's like, again, the barrier to entry is so high, like a lot more design is going to have to happen, and we're a lot smarter about making that not shitty at them. I don't know. It'd probably still be shitty just because how the world works and human nature. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so
I
I mean,
really want it not to be. I feel like someone like Vitalik is like a good example of someone who's like, I choose to be not shitty, and actually I am actually winning. And it's like, if we could have if more people like that, which even one at all is just amazing, you know. So I don't know. I feel like I'm seeing more of that anyway. I feel like again, sorry, I'll run in my rant soon, but like, as much as everyone hates cancel culture, in some ways it's like a better way to police ethics. Like, you always want to go, like, it always goes a bit too far, and then it's like a psychological hazard. But if you can take like a couple steps back, then it just ends up being a way, it's just a lot harder to do evil things. And ideally you can use social pressure rather than regulation, which might be exceptionally messy. But yeah, I don't know.
well, this I feel like goes back to our earlier conversation. You're talking about, like design incentives, like creating better design earlier on in the process. And we didn't do that with social media, and now we're sort of paying the price. And I feel like there are a lot of people in the AI world right now who are like, we can't afford to stop. We have to race forward really, really fast. We can't put any guardrails. And I guess it doesn't have to come from regulation, is what you're saying. But how can we encourage better design that doesn't get polluted by these terrible incentives?
I think we need way better education just about digital hygiene, mental health. And then I do think things like apps will come into play that can solve a lot. Like, do you use Opal, or do you know about Opal?
No.
It's like a screen time app. And it can like really, like, I use it almost every day, like throughout the workday. I block like Twitter and various other things. Uh, and it's great. And you can set it so like this is going to happen for 30 hours, and I literally, no matter what I do, can't access any social media or other things for this much time. And I think these are the kinds of innovations that like should be mainstream. Like, if you go to any school or any job, like those businesses should have like a sort of like Opal type things built in. So like you walk in that door and your shit doesn't work. Like, you're not, kids can't be distracted on TikTok like in a classroom, like no matter what. Like, um, yeah, and I think these kinds of things are just ultimately better because they ultimately are to an extent consenting. And I think the positives outweigh the negatives, especially just considering where we are. Like, it's like, I think AI education can change everything so dramatically. I think that can be one of the best things that ever happens. And medicine, like, I feel like education and medicine are going to be solved like in our lifetime. Like, education probably way sooner. But yeah, and yeah, and law, like legal lawyers.
Yeah. So you have been tweeting a lot lately,
I've been off for
including,
like 14 days mostly.
and you've been tweeting also about, like the problems with social media. You've been tweeting about some really heavy issues. There's a lot of love for you on the platform. There's a lot of hostility to you on the platform. What is your relationship to Twitter right now, and why does it seem like to me that you're tweeting through it, as they would say?
Uh, I've actually been mostly off besides like a couple days since like whatever day it is, like the end of January or something. Um, but it's just where all the cutting edge news is, and like all my friends use it. So, and the AI stuff, and it's good to keep track of the political stuff. Like, stuff doesn't even hit the news. A lot of stuff doesn't even hit the news, or it hits the news like 2 or 3 days later. Um, and uh, but ultimately, I don't know. I love to debate. I like getting in fights. They hate me less on Twitter than everywhere else.
I want to read. something that you tweeted a couple weeks ago. I feel like I was tricked by people pretending to be into critical thought and consequentialism, who are acting like power-hungry warlords and now cruelly enjoying the panic and suffering that obviously creates, and it's disturbing. Would you like to expand upon or clarify that?
Well, I knew there was some warlordism happening. I wasn't like a fool about it. But I will say, I think there was a lot of like, I'm like a very centrist Republican, and then this is going to be good, and like we're going to like fix the FDA, and we're going to fix microplastics. And I'm like, okay, maybe I don't agree with everything. Like, a lot of this is a mess, but like if we're here, yeah, let's like, there's some really positive things. Let's like focus on these things. I don't want to say too much because I'm not an American citizen. But again, coming back to diplomacy and decorum, I'm like reading the Anabasis right now, so I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just reading a lot of like Greco-Roman shit, and like, I don't know, it's just like when people are like, haha, like we won, I'm like, like what is the purpose? Like it's like, don't just be the anti-woke mind virus. Like don't just be a dick in the other direction. Like, and it's just when everything's just meme coins and shit instead of like, and cool, rather than just like, there are a bunch of like bipartisan things, like a lot of them, that would be so fucking great, that would like calm and unite the country, frankly. Like education, um, you know, like toxins, like shitty dyes, like the whole health situation, like so much about policing and the legal situation. Like, um, you know, yeah, I just feel that a lot of things seem either quickly not necessarily prioritizing the things that would just make more people happy. And I don't know, it's not, the Democrats are terrible about this too, but I just like, I hate when everyone's just like, yeah, we won and you suck and like you guys are like collectively whack. And it's just like, isn't like leadership about, you know, uniting everybody and like trying to explain why you're not whack unless you do plan to be whack. But I don't know. I feel like we have a lot of generals and not a lot of like kings. Philosopher kings would be the ideal situation. Like just like Lee Kuan Yew types. Like I just want people who come out here and like throw everything at the kids and throw everything at education, and like you don't need to be on either side to do things like that.
Do you feel like part of you, wanting to tweet, wanting to get into these debates, like trying to, uh, I guess, set an example for how the public space should be, how conversations should be?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I'm so canceled that I basically have nothing left to lose, so it's fine. It's fine for me. Uh, uh, but I do. I mean, I think a lot of people think I'm like one way or the other, but my whole vibe is just that like I just want people to think well. Like I want people to consider both sides of the argument like completely and fully. And so I'm just going to do that regardless of whether or not I get in trouble for it. Um, this seems to be a very controversial thing to do.
Whenever you tweet, you like get aggregated a ton
What
by
the
all, just like your tweets become spin-off articles or they get quote tweeted or like there's all this stuff
so
that happens.
crazy. Articles are so crazy. Luckily, I don't think anyone reads the press, but they're always like Grimes slams this, and it's like I'm all like usually very chill. Like
I mean, for instance, like this week it happened when you tweeted about your son in the Oval Office, and there was like a ton of discourse around that. What was your reaction to that moment?
I don't like slams. Like it was like Grimes slam. Like Grimes speaks out. It's like okay, it was a reply, but I would really like people to stop posting images of my kid everywhere. I think fame is something you should consent to. Uh, obviously, things will just be what they are, but I would really, really appreciate that if, you know, yeah, that's I can only ask. So I don't know, like just asking basically, but yeah.
Do you feel like America's leaders are thinking about AI and its development in the right way right now?
I'm not sure because whatever they're truly thinking, we're probably not allowed to know. Like I'm sure you saw Mark Andreessen talking about how there's like way more government interference in physics than we think. There's no way this is not happening in AI. And so I don't know. I really, again, I don't want to make policy. I don't want to have a ton of policy opinions about AI. I do think I wish there could be some more incentives though for things that are more constructive immediately. I'm repeating myself, but medicine, education, um, yeah, making the legal process less expensive, and um, if there's one thing to actually have equality in, it's definitely like the legal process. Like it's crazy that like in general, if someone has more money, they will win or are significantly more likely for a number of reasons. Like they can just make things go on for a long time. And the courts are super backed up. You know, if you look at our failing institutions, like I just don't understand why there aren't more incentives. Surely it would actually be cheaper to create incentives to fix a lot of these like incredibly uh archaic systems with things like AI and blockchain than simply supporting them with like absurd amounts of taxpayer dollars that yeah.
What's your relationship to your fan base right now? It seems a little bit fractured.
Just the Reddit. Everyone else is fine, you know. Like and honestly, like the more angrier they get, the more my streaming goes up. So I suppose it's fine, but I would definitely appreciate a less toxic vibe in the fan base. But it is what it is. That's why I have to rush music out. So they always chill out when there's music. So I just need to give them some art. You know, I think when people are upset, it usually is actually coming from the right place. Like personally, I think it's insane to think. Okay, I won't go into some of the conspiracy theories, but like it's insane to think that some of the things that people think, uh, and I cannot correct them constantly because they become a giant press cycle whenever you correct them, and then the press are like Grimes, whatever response to allegations of like whatever like they think I wish to do. So I just gotta put out art. I just gotta put out art. You know, I can't begrudge people wanting the world to be better. I do think though that social media really incentivizes people worrying that other people are evil. And in general, I think everyone across the board is worrying too much that other people are evil. And probably only like 10% of people are evil.
Do you worry that you're evil yourself?
I think it's extremely unlikely. If I'm evil, it's probably because I'm like, we're in a game and I'm like an AI that was developed to screw things up. And I'm not like consciously aware of it.
Cool.
Possible.
um, Last question, and thank you so much again for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to ask about leadership. You wrote recently on Twitter that the art of diplomacy, oration, and generally competent leadership has been lost. So, what does competent leadership look like to you, and especially like yourself as a leader? What do you hope that looks like?
I mean, again, no one should ever put me in charge of anything. Uh, I'm an artist. I come up with like lots of crazy ideas, but like it's up to other people to think about whether or not they should be implemented. But yeah, I mean, in general, I just feel like even the way the US government works and the US Constitution works and like Congress and the Senate, like things are supposed to be more coalitional. And, especially in terms of like international relations, like again, I know it's much easier said than done, but there just could be some better diplomacy and strategy and like about how we talk to other people. Um, you know, like yeah, I mean, I just feel like everyone's kind of acting like a baby. And I think there's a number of reasons for this, but like definitely the media and social media are stoking a lot of uh, hysteria, and then it's very hard for anyone to make rational decisions. Um, and at yeah, I don't know.
Cool.
I just think, yeah, I don't want to make too many statements. I'm not an American citizen. These are broad statements with no detail.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew.
Okay, take care.
Have a nice day. Thank you.